We know a deal has been done. We've learnt that in the last few minutes.
Do you think the money will be forthcoming?
As the world gets richer, its airports are getting busier and growing in number.
This grant is a very significant step by the OECD insiders that I've been speaking to.
From New Broadcasting House in London, World Business Report.
The big question, are the jitters for the global banking sector over? That's what many anxious investors are continuing to ask after the weekend rescue of Credit Suisse by UBS. In the last couple of hours, the US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has been offering more reassurances that the banking system is stable. In a speech to bankers in Washington, she said the US government is prepared to help more banks if that's what's needed.
The government's...
Well, Catherine, this London's Oxford Street is normally one of the busiest shopping streets in the whole of Europe, packed with shoppers from around the world. So it is something of a useful gauge of consumer confidence, how willing people are to splash their cash. But compared to years gone by, you can see there's not a huge amount of people. I've certainly been here the day after Christmas before, and it has been a lot busier. We don't have any figures for today, but we do know that on the day before Christmas, the analyst MRI was saying there was a significant fall in the number of people in the shops compared to a year ago.
If we look at the money that you want for Ukraine, given the state of the global economy, people talking about recession in the United States and Europe, China's economy not firing on all cylinders, what are your expectations? Do you think the money will be forthcoming?
Well, I certainly hope so, because
This is a fast-moving story. We've heard from some of the world's biggest shipping lines today. As you say, this is an important route for global trade through the Red Sea, through the Suez Canal, cutting shipping times from Asia to Europe pretty significantly. It accounts for about 12% of global trade. We've heard from Denmark's Maersk, which is the number 2 player in the industry, saying that they will pause all transit through that route until further notice, because as you might remember, it was one of their ships that was attacked at the weekend, the latest such attack.
Because lots of governments are in a similar situation. But just tell us, what are the arguments both sides are laying out in court today?
On an annualised basis, growth for April to June, that quarter, was below expectations, 0.4%, according to the official figures. And it's a result of the government aggressively cracking down on any outbreaks of coronavirus. And it raises a serious question mark over the government's target of 5.5% growth for the economy this year. That would itself be a 30-year low, and many economists are doubtful that even that can be achieved now. So let's bring in...
Food technology isn't just about coming up with new ways to make food. It's also about making better use of what we already have. Denmark's Agrain is one such company. Aviaya, what is it you're doing here?
Well, we are upcycling brewer-spent grains. So
do you think you'll be able to stick to that price point, or is that going to have to rise because of the cost of raw materials?
So we look at the underlying demand.
Well, this is very much the problem with Credit Suisse. Credit Suisse had been through a string of problems over the last few years, which had sapped investors' confidence. And those include a long list. The chair had to resign for breaking coronavirus rules. There was a bribery scandal in Mozambique.
The government says its pay offer is fair and reasonable. But the BBC understands it isn't prepared to hold further talks unless the doctors withdraw their strike action. But given the size of the gap between the two, that doesn't seem likely to happen. Jonathan Josephs, BBC News in central London.
What is the latest?
Yes, Sally, this has been confirmed by the European Union in the last half an hour or so. And what it is, as you say, there's a US election coming up next year, and that seems to be a key reason as to why we've had this announcement now. The suspension of these tariffs was due to end at the end of this year, but that's now been pushed back another 15 months to the end of March 2025 after the winner of that election has taken office in the White House. For President Biden, it's a bit of a way of trying to keep his EU allies on side, whilst at the same time appearing tough on trade domestically.
Well, let's bring in Claudia Sam from Washington. She is an economic consultant and former Federal Reserve economist. Claudia, thank you for getting up so early to talk to us. Just wonder, what are you expecting when this number comes out, and what might that mean for the US economy?
I expect we're going to see a little bit of relief.
Let's bring in the aviation consultant, John Strickland from JLS Consulting. John, thanks for being on the programme. Just wonder if you could give us a bit of an overview of these restrictions and the impact that they're having.
Well, Vita coming in quite quickly. We're here.
And bring in Sylvia Ridoni from Ernst & Young, the business consultancy, joins us from Cologne. Sylvia, thank you for joining us this morning. I wonder, with the cost of living crisis that people are suffering all over the world, is this going to be a less profitable Black Friday for retailers than it might otherwise have been? Now, London has lost its position standing on its own as the world's top global financial centre. That's according to research from the City of London Corporation, which governs the area that is home to many of the UK's financial institutions. It now shares top spot with New York. The research will raise concerns over London's recent performance. In the post-Brexit world, a number of high-profile companies have chosen to sell their shares in New York rather than London. Well, let's speak to somebody else who has chosen New York over London, our very own Michelle Fleury. Michelle, what's driving these companies to the Big Apple?
As the world gets richer, its airports are getting busier and growing in number. At the same time, the aviation industry is trying to address concerns that not enough of its jobs are filled by women. But if the gender balance in the cockpit doesn't better reflect the passengers in the cabin, the industry's ambitions for growth could be set for turbulent times ahead. Jonathan Josephs, BBC News.
Well, let's get more on this and bring in our international business correspondent, Theo Leggett. If I stand in the right place, hopefully the audience can see you. Theo, what's driving these job cuts? Rachel Burgess from Autocar, not What Car magazine. Thank you very much for joining us. And that's all we've got time for on World Business Report this time. There's plenty more on the website bbc.com/business. Sport Today is next.